That night felt just like every other night in Downey Hall. Looking back now, the world should have warned me. The moon should have shined brighter. The wind should have whispered louder. The lights in the hallway should have gone out. They didn't. It was another night alone. I think that simple lonely was what brought him. I almost didn't get up when he knocked on the door. It hadn't done me any good so far. The first time I opened it, it was my roommate. We were politely inattentive the first 2 weeks, but then he disappeared. He never even told me where he was going. I just came back to our room after theater appreciation one morning, and he was gone. Over the next 3 months, more people knocked on the door. The president of the Baptist Student Union with her plastic bag of cookies and plastic smile. The scouts for the fraternities who all smelled the same, cheap cologne and cheaper beer. I wanted friends, sure, but I wasn't desperate. High school taught me how to be alone. I only got up from my bed because I was bored. There were only so many video essays to watch. I threw off my sheet and felt the cold tile. Moonlight snuck in through the blackout curtains as I walked past my third-story window. Other people had gone out for the night like they did every Thursday. I went out the first week before a panic attack made me come back to the dorm. The next day, my roommate and his friends asked if I was okay. That's when I started hoping he'd move out. The man who stood at the door was someone I had never seen. He wore a black t-shirt and baggy jeans. His clothes weren't helped by his messy blonde hair down to his shoulders, or his stubble that almost vanished in the harsh fluorescent light, but it was all somehow perfect. Like every hair was meant to be out of place. He was what I had hoped to become: confident, handsome, adult. He put out his hand to me, and I noticed a simple gold ring with a strange engraving. It was a circle bound in a waving line. My eyes locked on it like it held a secret. Emmett? Yeah. My hand shook as I held it out to him. My body was trying to warn me when the world failed. I told myself it was just what the school counselor called social anxiety. Piper. His hand was warm. It felt like an invitation. Can I come in? Please. I winced as the word came out of my mouth. I wasn't desperate. Piper walked in like he had been in hundreds of rooms like mine. I hope I won't be long, he said as he pulled one of the antique desk chairs out. I sat across from him. Neither of the chairs had been used since my roommate left. I mostly stayed in bed. He watched me silently while my nerves started to spark. His eyes were expectant, the eyes of a county fair judge examining a hog. So, what can I do for you? I asked to break the silence. The question, Emmett, is what we can do for you. It felt wrong. The words were worn thin. Moon and Vine. He took off the gold ring and handed it to me. It wasn't costume jewelry. I turned it between my fingers. The circle I had seen was a half moon. An etched half formed the crescent, while a smooth half completed the sky. It was ensnared in a vine, kudzu maybe. What now? You haven't heard of it. At least, you shouldn't have. His sly smile held a dark secret. Have you heard of secret societies? Like at Ivy League schools? Sure. It wasn't a lie exactly. I had read something about them during one of my nights on Wikipedia. Is that what this is about? In a way. Moon and Vine is the county's oldest secret society. It's also the only secret society left in the state since the folks in the Capitol cleaned house a few decades ago. Our small stature let us stay in the shadows when the auditors came. His voice echoed memory, but he shouldn't have known all of that. He couldn't have been more than 25. He went quiet and continued to examine me. So not to be rude, but why are you telling me all of this? We've been watching you, Emmett. That's all I can say for now. If you want to learn more, you'll have to come with me. He took his ring and placed it back on his finger. What do you say? That was when I realized what was happening. This was the scene from the stories I read as a kid, the ones that got me through high school. This was when the person who's been abused, abandoned, alone, finds their place in something better than the world around them. Memories of badly shot public service announcements flicked in my mind. Stranger danger. But Piper couldn't be a stranger. He was a savior. He was choosing me. Even if the warning clamoring through my stomach was right, I didn't have anything to lose. Yeah, show me more. I was claiming my destiny. Piper led me down the switchback steps and through the lobby. When he opened the front door, the autumn wind shuffled across the bulletin board. The latest missing poster flew up. It was for someone named Drew P., whose gold-rimmed glasses and rough academic beard made him look like he was laughing at a joke you couldn't understand. He was a senior who went missing in the spring, the latest in the school's annual tradition. The sheriff's department had given up trying to stop it years ago. They decided it was normal for students to run away. Downey Hall sat right by the highway, the town's main road. You could usually hear the souped-up pickup trucks of the local high school students roaring down it. When Piper walked me to the shoulder, there were no sounds. It must have been late. I reached for my phone to check the time. Stairs. Ready? Piper asked. The breeze took some of his voice. Before I could answer, he started across the road. I had never jaywalked before, certainly not across a highway, but I followed him. He was jogging straight into the thick line of oak trees that faced Downey Hall. By the time I reached the opposite shoulder, Piper was gone. I could hear him rustling through the brush. I looked down the highway to make sure no one would see me. Then I walked in. It wasn't more than a minute before I was through the thicket. The first thing I noticed was the moonlight above me. It was dark in the thicket, but I was standing in a circular clearing where the moon didn't have to fight the foliage. In the middle of the clearing was what must have been a house in the past. With its mirroring spires on either end and breaking blackboards all around, it would have been more at home in 1900s New England than 2020's flyover country. It looked as fragile as a twig tent, but it felt significant. Decades, maybe centuries ago, it had been a place where important people did important things. I told myself to rein in my excitement. Coming? Piper's voice beckoned me from the dark inside the house. I didn't want to leave him waiting. Right behind you. I heard a shake in my voice as I hurried through the doorframe whose door had rotted away within it. The only light in the mansion was the moonlight. It wasn't coming from the windows. There weren't any. Instead, it was seeping through the larger cracks in the facade. I almost stepped on the shattered glass from the fallen chandelier as I walked into what had been a grand hall. I smelled the dust and cobwebs on the bent brass. A more metallic smell came through the dirt spots scattered around the floor. A line of figures surrounded the room. I couldn't see any of their faces in the dark, but they were wearing long black robes. They were watching me. I began to walk toward the one closest to me when I heard Piper summon me again. It's downstairs. Hurry up already. He was losing his patience with me. My mother had always warned me that I have that effect on people, but I had hoped it wouldn't happen so soon. I searched the dark for a stairwell. Walking forward into the shadows, I found where I was supposed to go. There were 2 sets of spiral stairs going down into a basement and up as high as the spires I had seen outside. Spiders had made their homes between their railings, and rats had taken shelter in their center columns. Between the 2 pillars was a solitary section of wall. It looked sturdier than the rest of the house. It towered like it had been the only part of the house made of a firmer substance, brick or concrete. It was also the only part of the house that wasn't turned by age. At the foot of the column was an empty fireplace. Whoever had been keeping up the column didn't bother with it. The column was for the portrait. It was in the colonial style of the Founding Fathers' portraits, but I didn't recognize the man. In the daylight, I might have laughed at his lumbering frame. It looked like his fat stomach might make him tumble over his rail-thin stockinged legs in any direction at any moment. His arrow of a nose and pinprick glasses almost sunk into his marshmallow of a face. Before that night, I would have snickered if I had seen him in a history textbook. In the moonlight, I knew he was worthy of reverence. The glinting gold plate under his tiny feet read Master Volp. I wanted to stare at Master Volp until the sun rose, but I couldn't leave Piper waiting. I had to earn my place. I ran down the spiral staircase on the left of the shrine and found myself in another vast chamber. I felt the loose dirt under my feet and noticed that the metallic smell was stronger. The room was lined with more robed shadows. Like the figures upstairs, they were stone still, waiting for me. I could just make out their faces in the light of the candles along the opposite wall. They were all young guys like me. In the middle of the candles, I saw Piper. About time. The charm of his voice was breaking under the strain of impatience. Sorry, sir. I got distracted upstairs. I winced at myself for saying sir. Now Piper would have to be polite and correct me. He didn't. There is quite a lot to see, isn't there? I'll forgive you this time. His laugh echoed off the walls. I saw they were made of concrete. I tried to match his laugh, but it sounded forced. I hoped he wouldn't notice. Walking towards his face in the dark, I tripped over a mound in the dirt. I had expected the ground to be flat, without any splintered wood flooring, but the mound must have been at least 6 inches tall and 6 feet long. As I made my way more carefully, I realized there were mounds all over the ground in a kind of grid pattern. Thank you, sir. I suppose the formality was part of their society. I was so close to not being alone. A little obedience was worth it. When I made it to Piper, I could see the writing on the wall. It was covered in names, all signed in red. In the center was Master Volp's name scribbled like it had been written with a feather quill dipped in mercury. Welcome, Emmett, to Moon and Vine's Hall of Fame. You can sign next to my name. Piper waved his hand over his name, written in stark red block letters. Then he handed me a knife. Its sharp point glinted in the wall's candlelight. He didn't need to say anything else. I knew what I had to do. I would earn my place in Piper's historic order with my signature in blood. I curled my hand around the handle's Moon and Vine insignia and took a deep breath. I turned my eyes to the far corner of the wall to shield myself from the crimson that would soon be gushing from my hand. That was when I saw them, the names that Piper was standing in front of. The one I remember was Drew P. The piercing sound of fear thundered in my ears. My breath caught in my throat, and I threw the knife down. It sliced my other hand as it fell to the floor. I didn't have time to feel the pain as I turned to run, but tripped over one of the mounds. I crashed into one of the shadowy figures. Adrenaline surged for what I thought would be a fight. I wasn't sure what Moon and Vine wanted me for, but it wasn't my brotherhood. Instead of a punching fist, I saw the acolyte's hood fall off. It didn't move. Its body was hard plastic. I looked into its mannequin face and saw the glasses from Drew P.S. missing poster. My memory is thin after that. My legs were carrying me, but I can only remember still images. The last one I can see is Piper's face in the shadows. He wasn't angry or sad. He was laughing. I had given him what he wanted when he saw my fear. I only know what happened next from the sheriff's report. Deputy Woods writes that he nearly struck a man in his late teens coming down the highway. Warrant claims that the man seemed drunk, but passed the breathalyzer. He writes, man stated in the woods, in the house, in the basement. Man then fell silent and collapsed. Man was delivered to campus security who returned him to his dorm. A couple days later, the story made the papers. A rural county sheriff's office found a burial ground for college runaways in the basement of an abandoned mansion. It eventually made the national news. The bloody wall of names even did the rounds on the edgier places of the internet. But despite all the press, no one ever mentioned Moon and Vine. Or Piper. been months since that night. The federal investigators have almost identified all of the 25 bodies that were buried in the mounds. The families have come to receive all the personal effects that have been placed on the mannequins. I'm alive. I should be happy, grateful even. I am most days. But every so often, there's a long, lonely night when I wish Piper would come back. Those nights, I hate myself for running. The scar on my hand reminds me how close I came. Even underground, the members of Moon and Vine were not alone. Love horror? Subscribe for more terrifying videos.